The family man, they say, was hunting women for 30 years. The Long Island Beach case. Before we begin, subscribe right now, because what you're about to hear is not a movie. It happened in a real town, to real people, and some of them never made it home. The door to the basement was old and swollen, like it hadn't been opened in years. The air in that house felt heavy, still, wrong. Detectives had already been inside for hours. Neighbors in Massapequa Park, Long Island, watched from the sidewalk and whispered. They always thought this was just a normal family house. A wife, kids, a husband who left early for work in Manhattan and came back late. A man who waved, held doors, talked about building plans. A regular father, a 62-year-old architect, a quiet neighbor. But that day, the street didn't sound like any normal street. No birds, no cars passing slow with music. Just tape flapping in the wind and police radios quietly clicking and hissing. They say when the lock finally gave and the basement door opened, the mood in that house changed. The joking stopped. The back and forth footsteps stopped. The talking stopped. The officers who went down did not come back up right away. And when they did, their faces were white and tight, like they had just seen the inside of something that was never supposed to be found. People in the neighborhood didn't know details. They only knew this. After that door opened, nobody called this place just a house anymore. They started calling it something else. A hunting place. The man who lived there, Rex Heuermann, had already been taken into custody in July 2023. Investigators say he is tied to women whose remains were found along Gilgo Beach, starting in 2010. He has pleaded not guilty. He is legally presumed innocent. But people on that block will tell you something simple and something cold. We thought the danger was out there, in the dark. We didn't know it might be inside a home with curtains and family photos. That is where this horror begins. Long Island, New York. Gilgo Beach. Wind that tastes like salt. Tall grass that hisses in the night. Water that erases footprints. This is not a warm beach with kids running and music playing. This part of the shore is different. It feels wide and empty, like a mouth. Starting in 2010, police started finding remains near that lonely stretch off Ocean Parkway. Not all at once, not in one clean place. In pieces, in stages, in silence. Imagine you're an officer walking through brush taller than your shoulders, pushing past branches that slap your face, and then you see something that shouldn't be there. You call it in. You tape it off. You mark the sand. You think, this is one scene. But then you find more. And more. Suddenly, this is not one night. This is not one incident. This feels like a pattern. And that's when the real fear starts. Because a pattern means someone has been doing this. Over time. Over years. Maybe over decades. Quietly. The public called it the Gilgo Beach case. People said Long Island now had its own nightmare. People online said there was a hunter out there, and he was choosing women, using the dark parts of the highway, and throwing them away like no one would come looking. Families were crying in police stations asking, "Is this my daughter? Is this my sister?" The answers did not always come fast. Sometimes they didn't come at all. For a while, it felt like this thing had no face, no name, just an invisible shape moving near the beach at night. Years passed. The case sat like something rotten under the floor. Then a new task force started digging again. Detectives went back through old phone records, old search history, old receipts. They looked at burner phones, strange calls, travel times. They used new DNA, methods that did not exist when the first remains were found. Prosecutors say those tests helped them link evidence to Rex Heuermann, a married architect who worked in Manhattan and lived in a normal-looking house in Massapequa Park. His lawyers say the science is weak and that police are trying to connect fear, not facts. This is where the horror sharpens. Because what scares people is not only what was found near Gilgo Beach. What scares people is the idea that a person could live like a neighbor in daylight and, for 20 or 30 years, still be able to walk in the dark like a hunter with no face. Think about that. You wave to a man in the morning. You push your trash can to the curb next to his. You hear his lawnmower. And investigators are saying that same man might have been moving in secret for years, choosing women, using fake phones, planning, watching, waiting. That is not a jump scare. That is slow horror. That is, you were never safe, and you didn't even know you were not safe. In September 2025, a New York judge said all 7 murder charges against him can be pushed into one single trial, and that prosecutors can use advanced DNA evidence that the defense tried to block. The state says showing it all together tells the true story. The defense says that is unfair, and that the jury will be poisoned before it even hears proof. The trial has not happened yet. He is still presumed innocent. But let me tell you what every neighbor is thinking, even if they don't say it out loud. If the police are right, this was not fast rage. This was patience, practice, decades of control. And if that is true, then that basement door was not just a door. They say it was the line between, we think we know what happened, and, we don't even understand how deep this goes. What they believe they found down there is the part that keeps the families awake at night, and it's the part that turned a quiet Long Island block into the cold center of a true horror story. The basement was not big. That is what people close to the case said later, when the lights had been taken down and the tape was gone. It was not some giant movie cave with red walls and metal chains. That's not how real horror works. Real horror is smaller, quieter, close to you. It looks almost normal, until you let yourself understand what you're really looking at. Down there, under that Long Island house, they say it felt like time had stopped. Old boxes, old papers, things saved, or hidden, or kept for reasons no one wanted to say out loud. Detectives moved slow, not loud, like they were walking through a memory that did not belong to them. This is where the fear becomes personal. It's not only what might have been done to the victims. It's the idea that terrible things might sit in a normal home for years, while kids play upstairs and neighbors wave from the driveway. It's the idea that horror can sit 5 feet under your dinner table, and you never know. Investigators believe that room mattered. They believe it tells a story of planning, patience, pattern. They believe it shows that the person they were looking at was not acting in wild anger, but in long, careful hunting over many years. Prosecutors say this is not random. They believe it looks like someone who watched, tracked, and selected. They believe it shows a method. They believe that method matches the remains found along Gilgo Beach starting in 2010. The defense says all of that is story and fear, not proof. They say the state is trying to paint a picture with shadows, to make the public feel sick before any jury even listens to the facts. They say you can walk into any old basement in New York and pull out something strange if you're already looking for a monster. They say people are being asked to believe a nightmare because it feels like a movie, not because it is true. The accused, Rex Hoyer, man, has pleaded not guilty and is legally presumed innocent. Still, something changed that day. You could feel it on the block. Before the arrest in July 2023, people in Massapequa Park said things like, he keeps to himself, and nice guy, quiet, and just a normal dad. After the search, nobody said normal anymore. They whispered instead. They watched each other. They locked doors in broad daylight. Wives told husbands, do not let our daughter walk alone, not even to the corner. Parents told their kids, come straight inside after school. No stopping. Don't argue. Just come in. This is the true horror of the story. Not only what happened to the women, not only what may have happened in that basement. The horror is the way trust dies in the whole neighborhood. Because once you believe that evil can dress like a father, smile like a neighbor, and sit across from you on the train into Manhattan like any other worker. You start asking a scary question. How do you ever feel safe again? Gilgo Beach still sits there, quiet, flat, open, with the tall grass moving like someone's hand brushing the tops. At night, if you stand there and listen, the highway hum is low and far. You can hear water pushing in and out, in and out. From a distance, the place almost looks peaceful. But for the families of the women, that stretch of sand and brush is not peaceful. It is a grave and a question mark. It is the place where someone treated human lives like trash and thought no one would ever find out. When the task force started connecting old phone records, travel routes, and burner phones, they said they could finally see a shape. Investigators believe the timing of calls, the movements, and DNA from certain material lined up with one man's world, his job, his driving pattern, his life schedule. They say that is why they focused on him. The defense said, "Coincidence? Gee, Wessing, you're building a monster because you want a monster." And now everything is moving toward one courtroom. In September 2025, a New York judge said something huge. All 7 murder charges tied to him can be tried together, as one story, instead of 7 different trials. The judge also said prosecutors are allowed to use advanced DNA analysis that the defense tried to block. Prosecutors say this is how you show the full picture, how you prove this was not one night, not one victim, but a long-running hunting pattern across years. The defense says putting it all together like that is poison, because it makes the jury hear serial before they hear evidence. And here is where the fear and the law crash into each other. If the state is right, then the horror is this. A hunter walked free for decades, driving in daylight, choosing in darkness, and leaving women near a cold beach like the wind would wipe them away, and no one would care. If the defense is right, then the horror is something else. An ordinary man, with a wife and kids and a job, is being turned into a monster by a story the world wants to believe, and the real killer is still out there. Either way, horror wins. Because either way, someone like that exists. The families of the women want something simple. They want answers that do not move, do not change, do not get walked back. They want to know, is this the person who hurt her? And they want to hear, yes, with proof, or no, and here is the real name. They do not want maybes. They do not want possibly. They have carried this weight for years. Some of them have lived more than a decade with no voice on the other end of the phone, no new photos, no birthdays, nothing but a memory of a person who is not coming back. People like to say closure, but there is no closure in something like this. There is only known or not known. Right now, it is still not known. The house in Massapequa Park stands different now. You can drive past it, but you do not just drive past it. You feel yourself slow down. You look at the windows. You picture that basement door. You think, how long was this sitting here while the rest of us were sleeping? And Gilgo Beach is still there. The grass still moves. The water still pulls in and out. The road still runs along the edge like a dark ribbon. The case is moving toward trial. The man at the center of it has pleaded not guilty and is still legally presumed innocent. The state is preparing to tell a jury a story they call a pattern of hunting that lasted for almost 30 years. The defense is preparing to tear that story apart, piece by piece, and call it fear theater. But here is the part nobody likes to say out loud. Even if that courtroom ends with a verdict, even if one man is named and sealed and locked away, Gilgo Beach will never be only a beach again. That stretch of sand has already been turned into something else. A warning. A memory. A place that says, you are never as safe as you think you are. And if you think this story was dark, the next one is worse. Subscribe, like, and stay close, because the next story starts with a girl who said she was fine and walked out into the night and was never seen again.